Hey guys, welcome back to OrmsTV. Today I am a rather excited fanboy because I have the all-new Fuji X-Pro3 right here, and I get to give you a first impressions review of what this camera is all about. But before we dive into that, please don't forget to like and subscribe down below and smash that bell icon so you get notified of all our latest content. Let's dive in. Okay, so let's do a quick spec run through first. And a lot of these specs are going to be pretty familiar if you're already in the Fuji lineup and kind of know where their range is at. So kicking it off, you have a 26 megapixel CMOS sensor, you have 425 autofocus points, and you have an ISO ranging from 80 all the way up to 51,200. All pretty standard stuff in the Fuji lineup. You also have dual UHS 2 SD card slots, all pretty standard stuff, and you have Fuji's, by now very familiar touch and feel dials up here for changing all of your settings. So you've got aperture and ISO over here and exposure compensation on this side. So now let's dive into some stuff that is not as standard. So first things first, you have Fuji's dual-purpose hybrid viewfinder system. So this viewfinder incorporates both an electronic viewfinder and a more traditional old-school optical rangefinder style viewfinder. And then on this specific camera, and this is quite a point of contention on the X-Pro3, but we'll dive into that later, you have this setup on the rear. So you have a small little screen here giving you settings, and then you flip it out, and yes, it can only flip in this orientation, and you have your traditional LCD screen. The Fujifilm X-Pro3 also has 11 film simulation modes, and Fuji has added another one into this camera, and that is their new classic negative simulation, and it kind of gives you almost like a slightly bluer tint and a slightly more contrasty color image, which is actually kind of nice. Then what they've also added here, and this is all new in this unit, the top plate and the bottom plate are actually made of titanium, and they have this new coating on them which Fuji calls like a carbon coating, and that's supposed to be very scratch resistant, very wear resistant. I can't see any wear on this camera yet, but we know that titanium is actually quite prone to scratching, although it's extremely tough. So I'd love to see how that holds up as time goes on. But it does kind of fill me with confidence that this is going to be quite a hard-wearing camera, and that is kind of what you're looking for in a camera like this. Now, jumping back to kind of the touch and feel of these cameras, and once again, Fuji has absolutely outdone themselves. The way that everything on this feels, when you touch it, when you turn it, the way the knurling on the dials are, it is absolutely perfect. You get the idea that you're holding a quality product. The grip is a decent size, it's not too big, but it still falls really, really well into hand. The viewfinder system works extremely well. So just touching on that as well, this is a new OLED viewfinder now. In the X-Pro2, it was an LCD, and the contrast wasn't great, and the quality sort of lagged a bit. But with this new OLED, Fuji's really, really knocked it. It also runs at 100 frames per second refresh rate, which is really good for a hybrid viewfinder of this style. Before we carry on with this, I just want to briefly touch on this hybrid viewfinder system. Now, this viewfinder basically has three modes that you can shoot in. First off, there's the full optical mode. So you look through the viewfinder, you don't see any digital representation of your image, so it's very traditional, and all that you see is basically what you see through your viewfinder, and you see an electronic projection of some of the camera settings. So you can see crop lines, exposure, that kind of thing, all within the viewfinder, but it essentially just looks like a full optical viewfinder. Then there is also the full digital mode. So with the digital mode, essentially what happens is a little screen pops into your field of vision right here, and that is where your OLED viewfinder lives. In that mode, it's essentially like any other mirrorless camera. You get a full digital representation, live view of what you're photographing. And that becomes very, very nice, especially in situations where the optical viewfinder just doesn't really do the trick, where you want to be a little bit more accurate and a little bit more clinical in your approach. Now, there's a third mode as well, and that's sort of a optical/digital rangefinder type of arrangement. So essentially, you see the full optical representation, so just a straight optical viewfinder, but then in the bottom right corner, you have a little projection of the focus area, but magnified so that you can see if your focus is spot on and exactly where you want it to be. And that is quite a nice little middle ground to be shooting in. And I actually find myself shooting in that mode quite often. With this camera, I actually very rarely use the digital viewfinder. I kind of use the digital viewfinder in darker situations or where the sun is extremely bright. Everywhere else, it's the optical or that sort of mixed rangefinder thing. So yeah. Okay, so now that we've been out shooting all day and seeing what this camera is all about, I need to talk about this situation right here, okay? Now, firstly, let me just get it out of the way. It's inconvenient, and there's no two ways around it, okay? The mere fact that it's a digital camera, I bring it up to my eye, I shoot, and instinctively, I want to look down at the screen immediately to see what I took. And you can't, because, well, there is no screen, as you can see. Every time that you want to look at the screen, unless you're using the electronic viewfinder, you literally have to flip it open to get the shot, to review what you just did. And in the beginning, I found this extremely annoying and very uncomfortable and almost unnatural. And then I started to kind of get to grips with it, sort of understand what Fuji is trying to do. And I'll get to that in a second. Let me just first mention the coolest thing about this. If you look at this little rear screen right now, you'll see that it says classic negative ISO 400. And for all of our viewers who harken back to a simpler time of photography, a time when you didn't have a screen and there was no sensor inside your camera, you will remember that you bought a pack of film, you tore the little lip off the carton and you slotted into the little holder on the back of your camera to remind you what you had in there and what ISO you were shooting at. And man, if that doesn't look exactly the same, oh, it warms my heart. But get back to the intention that Fuji has here. Taking away the screen forces you to do something that few other brands can get right. And the only brand that kind of springs to mind that gets this right is Leica. It forces you to look through the viewfinder. It forces you to engage with what you're doing. Taking away the screen immediately removes this action. Take and look. Take and look. And by taking that away, you just start to feel a little bit more. Everything becomes a lot more, what is the word I'm looking for? There's a little bit more feeling involved. There's something a little bit more tangible to it. Everything slows down a little bit. And especially if you're somebody who works with cameras on a daily basis, it becomes a chore and it becomes stressful. And taking the screen away, taking away that ability to immediately review what you just did, it just takes away the stress and it makes you feel a lot more calm. For me at least, it puts me into a happy place. a place where I feel more in touch with what I'm doing, where I feel closer to my subject. And though this is not for everybody, this is not a camera that's going to sell by the millions for Fuji, by no means. But it's a camera that really speaks to you. And though I can't tell you what camera to buy or even truly recommend that you go out and just outright purchase this camera, what I can do is I can recommend that you go to your nearest camera store and just try it out. Take it for 5 minutes and just experience what Fuji created here. And I'm pretty sure you'll fall in love with it. If my excessively long monologue there didn't give it away, yeah, I like this camera. Fuji did a good job on this one. Really, really did. I'm going to be sad when I have to give this back. And, well, it has to go back tomorrow, but it feels like this is the type of camera that I might just go out and buy for myself. And, well, I can only recommend that you guys do the same. So thank you very much for joining us for that first look at the Fujifilm X-Pro3. As always, we love hearing from you guys, so please don't forget to comment down below if there's anything we missed or anything that you would like to hear about, and we'll catch you guys next time. Cheers.